This is a unit on landscape. This is a landscape that I did. This is from Little Cottonwood Canyon. Took my easel outside, painted it, took some reference photos after several hours of painting and took it home to finish it. There are elements of collage sitting on top of the painting that I added in afterwards. Some basic terminology that you need to know. Horizon line, vanishing point, perspective. Okay, horizon line is where sky meets the earth. It's the furthest point that you can see on the land or the sea. The vanishing point is the way that we convey the illusion of three-dimensional depth on a two-dimensional page. Parallel lines that are going into the distance will converge at the vanishing point. That's illustrated really well in this picture. You can see that the trees that would be normally evenly spaced appear to be closer and closer to each other, closer to the horizon that you get, and they get smaller and smaller. Same with the telephone wires and the tracks on the railroad. We'll have you match up those words, and then we'll have you draw your own version of the simplified landscape that we just talked about with the railroad tracks there. This is a 10-point value scale. On this scale, we have 1 being the lightest, 10 being the darkest. It is essential that you get very, very good at recognizing values. All colors have value. Even things that are pink or red have a value associated with them. They have a lightness or a darkness. Pink and the red. The pink is a slightly lighter value. You have to imagine the color part of it is gone. What would this pink and this red look like if they were black and white? The pink would be slightly lighter than the red pencil. The pink, from my perspective, would be somewhere around a 3 or 4. Looks like a 4 on this value scale. And I did that by holding up this pink to that gray scale there. And the red is going to be somewhere around a 6 on this value scale. Now this takes practice. You should take a minute, pause the video if you need to, and practice this. Take something that has a color and then hold it up with this screen open so you can see the value scale there and try to determine where it falls from 1 to 10. Try it on 5 different objects. It's essential that you get very, very good at recognizing value. Value is more important than color in painting. If you've ever done a color by number, it works precisely like this. So here's an example of the first landscape that you're going to do, a very simplified version of a landscape. I want it to be monochromatic. That means one color. I don't care if it's done in black paint or red paint or brown paint, doesn't matter. What does matter is that your objects in the distance are going to be higher up on the page, and that's where you're going to start. And your objects in the foreground are going to be darker in value near the bottom of the page. And they should overlap. Light, that's like a 1 on the value scale, 2 in this mountain range, 3 in the following mountain range, 4, 5. That's about a 7 or an 8 down there. Here's an example. This one's painted, but this is precisely what you'll be doing. Light value in the background, nice solid color in front of that. We've got a nice kind of crisscross overlap on these mountain range. Slightly darker value, slightly darker. It appears that they have actually changed to their hue a little bit also. Their hue has gotten a little bit darker and a little bit more navy in the front than it was in the background. little more aquamarine back there. But between each step, clear, distinct steps in value, you essentially are making a value scale like this one here, only it's done completely with mountain ranges there. You're showing me that you have value control. It's a photograph of me on my mission, meditating on Dobong Mountain. But you can see that the mountains in the background, even in real life, not in a painting, behave this way. In the foreground here, really dark values. As we get further away, lighter values. I'm going to skip these examples for now. And here's an example of sumie painting, famous in Japan. Again, the mountains in the background, very, very light, very, very simplified. And then they overlap, and the mountains in the foreground have much darker values and more detail. So I want you to go ahead and give that a try. Just on one of your watercolor sheets there, make a watercolor landscape using one color, a monochromatic painting, one color, monochromatic. Light value in the background, start near the top of the page. Then you overlap slightly, paint a little bit more, overlap again, and overlap again. Each layer of mountain range should go basically all the way across your page and should be consistent in value all the way across. I don't want it to be squiggly. I don't want to see patches of light and dark on each mountain range. Each mountain range is a distinct value step down, just like that 10 scale that we looked at. However, the content of your landscape can vary. Could be mountain range, that's the easiest. I've had students do a cityscape with buildings in the backgrounds and buildings coming forward. That's also fine. But what I'm looking for is clear, distinct steps in value. Start from the background and work your way into the foreground. The background being the lightest values, the foreground being the darkest values. Monochromatic. Okay? Give that a shot. Let's see how it goes.